Now, we like to think of ourselves as experts on board games, but here's 10 games we are dead wrong about. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike.
I'm Nick.
We are the Brothers Murph, and indeed, we're here to mea culpa.
Yes.
To 10 games that we were wrong about.
Yes.
Our first impressions were not correct, and they're in fact much better than we originally assumed, or maybe even put out on the internet. Maybe said.
Yeah, maybe even. Yeah, maybe we said these games were trash.
Ew.
So I will say this list particularly is going to be that direction. So it's going to be games that we didn't like and now we do kind of thing. Over on our Patreon, we do have 5 games. Another little list that's kind of the opposite direction. It's games that we used to like that we kind of don't like as much anymore. So if you want to check that out, make sure to go join our Patreon. We would really appreciate it.
Exclusive content.
Indeed. We're going to keep this one nice and positive. These are the 10 games that we were dead wrong about.
Sorry. Hey, you know something that we were wrong about? You. We thought that you were subscribed. Watching here, we're giving you all our content. You can't even do us that grace. Make us look like fools out here. Subscribe. So number 10 is been more my journey than yours, although you've dabbled a bit.
I've dabbled a little bit now, and I feel like I'm getting more into it.
Dabbled a little bit. This is kind of a category. This is going to be war games, and I'll say Cuba Libre as the main culprit, the main game that got me over the hump.
Yeah.
Being into war games. So this is something, a whole genre of games, large genre of games is war games that take specific conflicts from things all around the world, specific times and things, and puts you in the shoes of the different factions that were, at odds at that time and are very event-based, historically event-based. Yeah. So though you'll be dealing with actual, things that happened and kind of playing them out and maybe changing the outcome from reality. And these are games that, like, for the longest time, just went against our general style in many ways.
Yeah, they don't aesthetically look how we generally want games to look.
Still don't,
to be completely honest. And then just like, they have all of those little square chits and they're all little troops and they have their little stats on them. And it's just not our kind of games. It still is never going to be much. You're again, much more into these games than I am at this point, but I am getting more and more interested in these games. Particularly there are kind of like games that are like war games, but are more like event-based, like a Just for Robin Hood. Cuba Libre is more event-based. And then
Votes for Women we really like.
Yeah, Votes for Women, which is very event-based. It's like that card-based. And even then, like something like GMT, who make a lot of war games, they even have games like the Plum Island Horror, which has those kind of like little chits with your little stats and stuff on them. But it's like this cooperative game where you're trying to like evacuate an island from a zombie horde. And it's like, and so games like, it's like everyone needs a gateway in. And I feel like these kind of like on the fringe kind of war games are getting me more interested in like proper war games. And it isn't a genre that I'm like, we were wrong about this.
Yeah, the kind of center of a lot of those is the coin system. There's like an action selection system at the middle that every round has an event that can be triggered, by a player that usually be more advantageous for one side or the other. And so there's this kind of like DNA that you see throughout these games, which makes it easy once you get in a little bit to try the next one and the next one. So I'm now excited to, go down the rabbit hole a little bit further. But I think it really comes down to theme. Another game that for us really kind of made us go, was Burning Banners. This is...
Yeah.
It has a lot of the look of it, but it's all kind of fantasy. So it's like orcs and dwarves and things. And so it's like, okay, well, it takes it out of the real world conflict and puts it into, this mythical land, which I thought was also kind of cool. So this
I really liked Burning Banners.
This is a developing journey. Yeah. So far, but like war games in general, like that whole section of this hobby, I was just like, nope, write it off. And now I'm like, I'm gonna knock on the door a little bit, if not kicking it down.
Yeah. So number 9 is gonna be a game that I can honestly say, I think it's the only Garfield game that we didn't really, really like.
Yeah.
And this
was the first miss.
Yeah, this would be Circadian's First Light. Yeah. It's one of the things we were talking about beforehand when we were making this list, and we were like, I don't know what we were sniffing that day, what we were smoking, because we played it like 2 or 3 times, and every single time we're like, just didn't really like it that much. Didn't like hate it. It wasn't like, oh, this is terrible. But just we're like, didn't really like it, like didn't love it. It was meh, da-da-da. And then like the last like 2 or 3 times we played it, we've like loved it.
Really enjoyed it.
And I honestly don't entirely know what the difference was between those few plays. You mentioned that like the resources in the game, this is a game where you are taking on some kind of faction, an alien faction, or you could be like humans, or actually they're all kind of humans.
You're going in like and visiting this alien world and dealing with these
dealing
alien
those factions. I'm thinking of Chaos
nations.
Order, which is set in the same world where you are those different factions. But yeah, but like you're basically making like algae farms and you're getting water and stuff like that. You're moving your rover and stuff. But resources are very tight. And I just in general, just based off the way it looked in the theme, I just always expected it to be a different game than it actually was.
Yes.
And then once I kind of like, oh no, this is this game, then I loved it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was just maybe going in with expectations of the game being something that it wasn't, and the surprise of that kind of puts you off for a little bit. And then also we got better at working with that resource engine.
Yeah.
Like, how do I actually get things done? How do I focus my efforts into a way that's appreciable so I can get some stuff done? Because I think we felt really handcuffed the first couple plays. The specialist expansion also was really cool, and I think kind of helped out and added some things to it. So there's more levers to pull, which was really awesome. But even without the expansion, just the base game, we grew in a lot of enjoyment of that.
Yeah.
I think once we kind of figured out like how to work within the puzzle that was before us and figuring out that it's not the one that we thought it was going to be.
Totally.
So.
And sometimes that happens, but it's really, really fun. But we just the first number of times we played it, and but now we really like it.
Hey man, Garfield don't miss.
Garfield doesn't. That's the thing. It's like Garfield doesn't miss.
Praise be don't miss. Garfield don't miss.
My gosh,
something about that part of the world. Man.
I know.
New
Seriously,
Zealand,
down under New Zealand, Australia, people are making great stuff.
All right, next up.
We're too young.
It was purely a product
babies. We were little babies.
We thought we could take on proper Euro games in our infancy in this hobby, and we were so wrong at the time. But this is Last Will.
Yes.
So Last Will is the precursor to your favorite game now, Prodigal's Club, and in fact can be combined with that game into a mega game.
No way.
And this is a game where you are basically trying to get this inheritance from your relative by being the most destitute, poor person in your family.
Yeah.
The only problem is you absolutely aren't. You have means and you have wealth, and so you need to get rid of your money and your properties and anything that makes you look like a person who has any kind of cash flow whatsoever so that you can win by getting the inheritance and stuff. And this is one that the main takeaway we had from the first couple times we played it early on in our hobby is we really liked the theme.
Yes.
The theme was awesome.
Still do. Yeah.
But it blew our mind in terms of like the action selection because
it's weird.
It is, but it's weird, especially if you don't have kind of like some of the language of board games in your system yet. It was this like thing where like, why do I get like 5 hats and 2 workers right now? And like, we couldn't make sense of it.
Yeah. The action selection is basically, there's like a kind of, a row of different, and basically what you're doing is you're kind of putting out your person on there, and this is you saying, choosing that, it's going to give you a certain amount of actions and a certain amount of cards.
Yeah.
But it's all over the place. It'll be like 0 actions and 4 cards, or like 1 action and 3 cards. But there's somewhere it's like 2 actions and 7 cards. They seemingly, when you look at them, make no sense.
Yeah.
And so we first saw it, we're like, I don't get these. And now that we're more experienced gamers, you're like, oh, this round, I don't need to do as many actions, but I want a lot of cards. Yeah. And so now it just makes a lot more sense. But when we first saw it, it was because it seemed
super arbitrary.
It seemed really random. Like the amount of each that you got was super weird.
Right.
And so we're like, I don't get this. What's the point of this? Da 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 da. And then now we're just geniuses, and it makes it easier.
Super genius. So it's no big problem for old big brain Murphs over here. No, but it was that thing of like, when we returned to it, all of a sudden this one space that I was like, why would I ever click this? I'm like, oh, I can see, I know the scenario. I want to play a bunch of cards. Like, I get it. I have this all lined up. Let me take that action. And it started to make a lot more sense. So that was one that was just really interesting. But like, we walked away from Last Will intrigued.
Yes.
We were so intrigued by the theme, but it was just, and it was at the time so heavy for us. It was something that we couldn't even wrap our brains around. Like, there's properties you can buy in the game, and they depreciate in value the longer you hang on to it. And I remember that, like, well, I don't get, like, how does this work? And like every round it just goes down a thing, and like there's all these things that like you literally, if you get into this hobby and play board games, the muscle of your brain gets stronger. And you learn more, again, of the language that is the construction of games, the baseline foundation of games. you develop that language better. And then when you come back to something, you're like, oh, this isn't that
bad. It's not
heavy.
It's not that heavy at all. This is like a medium weight game.
Yeah, the same thing with like Yokohama, for
Yeah.
example. It's not on this list, but a game that like the first time I played, I was like, this is the heaviest thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
I cannot understand how to like line everything
Yeah.
up. And now I'm like, oh, this is a very standard game.
Yeah, it's not
a
that heavy
good
at
game,
all.
really good
Yeah,
game, but
yeah.
like not that crazy.
Yeah.
For my experience level.
So last was number 8. This next one, number 7, was a real roller coaster because we were mega hyped.
Yes.
Played it like 2 or 3 times. Actively it probably could be higher on the list. Actively disliked it
Yeah.
and now love it. And
Now
this
we're
is
back.
Tidal Blades, Hero of the Reef, the first Tidal Blades.
Heroes of the Reef, man. Yes.
It was such a cool world, still such a cool world,
Oh, yeah.
where you are these Tidal Blades in this kind of like American Gladiators kind of
You're
competition. but-
doing skills competitions.
skills competitions.
You're at the Olympics, you know.
yeah, that's really what it is. Let's bring back American Gladiators. Roid them up.
Dude,
Just be as roided as
not
possible.
roids are possible, they're mandatory.
Yeah, exactly.
know what
like
I
you
mean?
need you have gills.
I
You're
want
gonna
you
have
to be,
so many
yes,
roids.
just not even realistic.
yeah,
at all.
exactly. That's
That's
what I
not
want.
what this game's about.
No, but yeah, so this one, but it's essentially this dice management game is what it is, because
Yes.
what you're constantly doing is you're doing all these skills, doing things, you're rolling these dice, and these dice have various symbols on them where you need there's focus and tenacity or whatever they are.
Stunt, yeah.
And stuff like that, and there's like red dice and then like blue and green dice and stuff like that.
There's
You're-
a whole tech tree of dice.
yeah, that's what it is.
They get more and
really.
more specialized as you go.
And as you do these things, you can essentially upgrade your dice to the next level, which is going to have more of these symbols on them, but they get more specialized. Like this one has a ton of blue symbols, but that's literally it.
Yeah.
So whereas the kind of lower ones have a mix of all the symbols. And so you're literally like building out this kind of tech tree, but then there are these kind of big monsters that are kind of coming in through the reef, and you can go fight them. When you fight them, you're losing these dice.
yeah, they
So
don't
you
come
kinda-
back to your
No.
your discard pile.
And so
or
you're
whatever.
constantly having to get more and more of these dice. And the first couple times, we just could not work that system.
Yeah.
We just were flat out bad at it. It
was-
wasn't even so much a problem with the game. We just sucked at working that system. So we're just like, I have no dice. I can't do anything. This sucks. I hate this.
There was literally like one of the games we played where we both went into the final round with 0 dice.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, your last round is not going to be that impressive.
no, it's not going to do anything. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And this is something that like we realized that the center of that dice management is the core thing in the game you need to focus on so that you can keep kind of doing stuff. And how do I allocate these dice knowing I'm only going to get 3 of them back at the end of the round? And I think you can only hold 6 total at any one time. And the monsters were just like, I was like, I'm never going to fight the monsters because I can't afford the dice. Now I'm like, oh, I'll fight the monsters all the time. This is going to be cool. I know I can get dice. We're good.
Yeah.
And that was really exciting. But the first time we ever played it, we played it when Tidal Blades was on Kickstarter, which I think was in 1958.
Yeah. This
And it was very early on, and we loved it, played it with James Hudson. And then a long time passes, and then the
like
game
2 years.
arrives because it's this beautiful big production, but it took a lot to get there. And we played it, and we're like, oh no.
really disliked it.
And then now we're back to really liking it. So one thing I'll say for that game, though, I will say this. There's the option to play with I can't remember what it's called, like the training round or something. It basically gives you a 5th round to play
Yes.
with. Play with that round.
Yes, you need it.
Because it gives you more time to get up and running. And it's like a world I like inhabiting, so I don't mind it being 1 round longer. Play with that round because I do think it makes the game better.
I totally agree.
Fancy people drink tea and have bowling on the lawn in Obsession, which is next up on the list.
Not gonna lie. So when people say bowling on the lawn, I thought they were bowling.
Well, they're doing lawn bowling.
No, but I didn't know that was a thing. I thought they were like bowling, like
mean, kind of.
with gutters and pins,
Sure.
like
sure.
full out on
Pins
the
and
lawn.
a small wooden ball, but yeah.
No,
I mean, it's
full,
like
full fingers and holes.
Sure.
Boom, chucking them.
Yeah.
Obsession is what we're talking
It could be.
about.
We're talking about Obsession. Obsession is more in the camp of
The perception.
dismissed it
Yeah.
out of hand prior to ever trying
Yeah.
it. And like,
Because we didn't play this game and we're like, oh, I hate that, and then later
No.
liked it. This was much more. We'd completely written it off.
which was we were wrong to do.
Yeah, that's what we mean. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a game that came out a while ago and then kind of got really hot a couple years after it first came out. I think it got into more people's hands and things with a new edition and stuff. And it's all about, you are kind of in polite society. You are a family who was, once one of the great families, and you're trying to essentially bring yourself back to the center of the kind of social conversation. You're trying to get your reputation up, trying to get those funds up, rebuild your house.
Yeah.
And host these various activities and bring the gentry, your guests
It's all status.
over.
Let's be honest. You have plenty of money.
But you know,
Yeah, you have
compared
plenty of money.
compared to right,
Compared to the Rothschilds,
normies like us for sure. And you're trying to do this through hosting activities, which might be like bowling or having cigars in the lounge and stuff. And the cards that you play are going to give you these perks of money and reputation and more guests and things. And you're just trying to do that kind of in a Downton Abbey like world. So when this game kind of first came into our awareness, you know, it has like an objectively like a pretty cover, but it's just like this front of this house. It looks very Downton Abbey-ish. And I was just like, and the name Obsession, I was like, I don't even know what this is.
Yeah, and like
who cares?
The look of the game, it's all like pictures of these people because they're all real people that existed. So it's all kind of like old timey pictures. Well, not old timey. These are actually just pictures of people.
But it's very dated.
But
looking.
it's very dated looking, and I was just like it looks a lot of like war games kind of look like that, where it's just like old pictures of these generals or whatever. Yeah. And I was just like, what is this? Like, it's about like, you're like posh British people. It's got like, again, now I really like the look of it, but at the time I was just like, I don't get this.
It fits this whole aesthetic.
Objectively like a weird game. Like it feels very different when you're playing it. Like it doesn't really feel like any other game. So when people try to explain it to me or when I try to research it, I was like, I don't get what you're doing in this
they're like,
game.
you're hosting parties. And I'm like,
what do you mean?
How does that translate?
And you need to
game?
bring like a butler? I don't get it. Like,
and they're like, yes, you do.
Yes,
and you're like,
you must bring a handmaid with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like this interesting thing where it was just, we were wrong sheerly off of confusion because we were just like, I don't get it. I have no interest in this game. I don't want to play it. It looks weird. I don't like the look of it. Yeah. It's not a theme to this day that I'm particularly, I like the theme now, but I'm like, I'm not super into like posh British. I'm not into like the Downton Abbey kind of shows at all and stuff like that. So there's not really any of that, you know, no Bridgerton stuff for me. And so it's just like, I was just like, I don't get it. Well, I just completely wrote it off. And then we just kept hearing how great it was over and over and over again. And then we tried it and I was like, oh no, I get it.
I got a chance to play it, you know, a year and change ago.
You played it in Jolly Old, right?
In Jolly Old, England at Aircon. And it was super fun. I had a great time. And then I was like, oh, I get it. This is really fun. This is cool. And it's just fun to like lean into that.
Yeah,
theme
totally.
And
now I love it. Yeah.
Have a good time with it. Yeah. So it's one that like, again, it's just, you know, be open-minded. Like it's okay to have the initial dismissal, and it's okay that we like change our mind and be like, no, maybe this is kind of cool. People keep talking about it and recommending it to us. Maybe there's some reason why. And I'm glad that we were open enough to like, okay, well, let me try it. Let me play it.
Yeah, totally.
And then I'm like, oh, it's great. And then I bought it. So
What if I did the rest of the video like this?
You should, Nick, because this one's all about you, man. This is your journey.
This is
your journey.
This is this weird?
Yeah, it's weird. It's objectively weird, but I don't know if we care.
These chairs are so comfy. So this is going to be the Search For series, but we're going to say specifically the Search for Planet X.
Correct. Yeah, the first one.
So if you've watched our channel, any of our channel, the last, I would say year and a half, we have both become massively into deduction games.
Logical deduction.
Logic deduction. Not really social deduction.
Social deduction can still suck.
It can still get wrecked.
For the most part. Right? There are some we like. But yeah, logic deduction.
Logic deduction game where you're trying to figure something out. Yeah, in the last couple of years, we've gotten very, very into these kind of games. And I was wrong about many of them, but particularly the Search for Planet X, I was really, really wrong about because I didn't like logic deduction because to be fair, when I first started playing logic deduction, I wasn't very good at it. I think just my mind, it's like you said, you're working out the mind, your mind.
It was a new muscle.
Yeah, you're working on a new muscle. And so it's like one of those things where like, I think I just wasn't very good at it. And because I perceived that I wasn't really good at these kinds of games, I would get, I'll just put it out there. I would get embarrassed when I would play them because I would feel like I looked stupid when I was playing.
Because you think you see all these people connecting these dots and you're still in the dark.
Yeah, because we'd play these games. And sometimes people are like, "Oh, I figured it out," and I'm like, I am nowhere near it, and it would make me feel stupid. And no one likes feeling stupid, including me. And so like I really was turned off of all these games, particularly the Search for Planet X, because the Search for Planet X is you are trying to find Planet X, and you can find locations of other bodies in our solar system, like asteroids, other planets, things like that. And all of those things have logic rules to them. Like asteroids are always next to another asteroid. So if you find one in section 12, section 13, or section 11, one of those at least has to have an asteroid because they're always next to at least one more. So as you're getting these logic rules, you are learning more and more about the sky in this case. And you can then eventually pinpoint where Planet X is based on all these things. But in this game and in the whole Search For series, you might know something and you can basically like because you get points this way at the end of the game, you can basically confirm that something is someone.
Yes, you can
But when you confirm it, you are confirming it for everyone. So if you say, I think there's an asteroid there, and then later on that gets revealed there is, now everyone knows there's an asteroid there, and you're giving them information. So there's this whole other part of it where you don't necessarily want to give away what you know. And you kind of want to tease that information out there because you want those points, but you don't want to help other people.
Yes.
And the whole concept of like deduction, which I would get embarrassed when I was playing, and this concept of like, you can't let too much on. I hated the concept. And so I was wrong about it originally. And then I started playing them, started to like them. But then I was like, I only want to play them solo. I only want to play them solo because then it's just me and I can't get embarrassed if I'm getting my ass kicked by someone who's way smarter than me. And I'm like, I only, because, you know, it's like, I only want to play it solo. I like these games, but I only like them solo. And then I started playing more and more solo. And then I started playing a little bit more competitively. And now I love them competitively.
Yeah.
And so it's this thing where it's become this kind of whole journey where at first I just wrote them all off because they made me feel dumb. And then I was like, no, I like them, but only like this. And then I'm like, no, I was wrong about
now
all
it's
that.
a fairly unconditional
And now the whole like, oh, I don't want to let you know exactly what I know.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, I love them.
That's something I really enjoy about the game is if you see like if I have an idea about this one sector,
Yeah.
and I see 2 or 3 people pop down things real
Like,
quick,
oh,
I'm
maybe-
like, I think it is a
Maybe
gas
it's a gas
cloud. I'm
cloud.
throwing it down.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? That might be for the better or worse.
Yeah.
But that's a cool element of the game of like,
Yes, it is. It's a cool part of the
man,
game.
maybe, you know, but of course I want to throw it down because I don't want to not get points for it because once it gets
Yeah.
confirmed, now it's out. So yeah, it's been a really awesome journey, I think. I think we both really have enjoyed diving into games like Turing Machine and these Search 4 games where there's lots of deduction. We're getting a copy of Alchemist soon, which is one that people have mentioned many times that we have
so
to play if we
excited to
like
play
those kinds of
Alchemist.
games. Cannot wait for it.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been a cool journey. I mean, that's why it's, you know, Search for Lost Species right back there.
This one's also another roller coaster.
This has been a roller coaster ride. So this is the Champions of Midgard. Now, the main reason it's on this list right now is I think we've been
were wrong a
about it
second
in a second, kind of way where this is a game that we got fairly early on because we started off really more in the kind of like Ameritrash, chuck and dice, zombie
And this was,
side.
I feel like, one of the first games that was really advertised as like a hybrid between like Euro games and Ameritrash games.
Yes, and I think it deserves that title because it's a worker placement driven game that then gives you dice to go chuck and fight monsters and stuff. So it gives you these two halves of the round kind of reflect the two kind of extremes of the hobby. Very Euro game strategy centric and very kind of dice luck driven stuff. And so it was a good gateway into more kind of Euro game mechanisms and stuff for us. And we owned it for a long time. We have both expansions. Enjoyed those expansions, had the playmat, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then
Fully deluxified,
upgraded bits and stuff. And then we got to a point where I think we were kind of like being a little too precious with like our game tastes. And we were doing some calls because we did need to clear up space.
Yeah.
And Champions of Midgard wasn't getting played, but I think we kind of thought like, we're like really
I don't like it anymore.
We're Uwe Rosenberg, really Euro game.
Farming's the only theme I want.
Yeah, and it just as a result,
we got a little snobby.
we're a little snobby, a little full of ourselves, and we called it.
We did call it, the whole thing,
and got rid of it and stuff. And it's one that now I've spent more time like looking back and be like, man, I really enjoyed that game. I really enjoyed what it was. And who cares if we didn't play it all the time? The times we do, it always brings a lot of enjoyment. And there was a game night recently that I wasn't able to go to, but people were playing Champions of Midgard. I heard about. I was like, man, I would love to play Champions of Midgard tonight. That'd be great. And so I'm like, it's one that like we don't have a lot of regrets, but it's one I'm like, I really wish we hadn't pulled back because we did have everything for it.
Yeah,
it was fully just.
And it's a really fun game.
It's a fun game, and I'm like, now we don't have it. So
yeah, it's very much
we
like
that.
Loved it, and then we're like, nah, we were wrong. I don't like it at all. And now we're like, no, I did like that game.
I think there's a period of time where we were a little snooty and stuff, a little limited in our scope of games that we are willing to enjoy.
Full of humility and humbleness.
Yeah, we're
now.
super humble now, man.
Oh.
If we can get a gold medal, it'd be in humblitude.
Number 3, both of us were kind of like meh.
We're getting now into territory where the audience is going to be like, yeah, you were wrong
about this. And this is Spirit Island. And I think we were wrong about Spirit Island.
I don't know if we were wrong so much.
I didn't like it. Straight up.
Yeah, but I think some of the games on this list are proving to be like there is a time and place to dive into certain games.
Yeah.
And something like a Spirit Island is not one I would recommend people get into early. I know there's some people like, oh, my first game.
Yeah, great.
Good for you and your gigantic brain. Like, that's amazing.
But if
for
you have
us.
a normal sized brain like us, maybe a little smaller than normal.
Yeah, like if your head doesn't look like Toad, going out like yay, like then
Just Mega Mind, like
Spirit Island for us was one that
it was too much.
blew the top of our skull off
Yeah,
because
yeah.
we're like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And like the strategy and all the moving pieces seemingly at the time, like
Yeah.
we were swimming. And
Yeah.
we were head below water, like not able to track what
No.
is going on.
And it was-
how to be effective, how
Yeah.
to be a useful teammate because it's a cooperative game. So I'm like, I'm dragging everyone down. It was really too heavy for us the first times we tried it. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, it really was. It was way, way, way too much. Kind of like Last Will, except for this one actually is like a pretty heavy game. Last Will is not a heavy game at all. But it's like, and I recently was proved my wrongness this spring. I got to play it with my good friend Tara.
Yeah.
And because it's like her favorite game. And like I'd always said, like, I don't really like it. But I for the last couple of years, I've been like, I want to try it again because I feel like I need to try it again. And then we played it at BGG Spring, and I loved it. And I loved it. I was like,
good.
great, because this is one of those games where it's like, I love the theme. Like, you're spirits of this like island, and there are people kind of like colonizing your island, and you're trying to kick them out. It's like the kind of reverse as what it usually is, which is usually you're the colonizers.
Yeah.
And it's just a cool theme. It's got you're like very, very cool like spirits. They're all different and unique. It's just such a cool concept, and I just didn't like it. And I'm just like, no, but I feel like this is one of those games, and particularly the next game we're going to talk about is very, very much like this for me specifically. I'm like, but I want to like it. And I feel like I should like it, but I don't. And like, why is that? And like, do I just need to push through? And I feel like this one was kind of like, yeah, I need to be a little more used to like heavier games and then just push through it. And get through it. And now I'm kind of like, oh, it's not that heavy. I mean, it's not a light game by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm like, oh, like, I could play this. Like, totally, this is not that bad at all.
Yeah,
and
it's
like,
a well-organized game in that you kind of see like what's coming down the road. Like you see like what things are going to become problem areas. And as we've kind of grown in gaming, we're just able to track more things at once. It's not that this is all of a sudden a light game. It's not.
No.
There is a lot to track, but you're working cooperatively, which helps. And you can kind of think through and see what's a problem now, what's going to be a problem next round, and try to plan accordingly. And figure out like using your spirit's powers and your abilities and the card play and using icons to trigger your abilities and stuff. It's grokkable now.
Yeah.
Like it's something that like you can understand. And of course there's like simpler spirits and more complicated spirits and stuff, but you can kind of start on the simpler side, which is where we kind of both still reside, and then work your way up.
I'm still doing the lightning one. That's my jam. That's
I love that,
one.
dude. Lightning guy's awesome. That's a perfect starting point. Go with the lightning spirit. It's great.
Yeah, it's awesome. So Spirit Island's number 3. Now I'm pretty full. Speaking of being full in, I feel like this one is I'm more into this game than you, but you like this game now too.
I do too, and
I
was really out on it.
You really were, and this is Too Many Bones.
Yes.
Too Many Bones is like the absolute epitome of the game that like I really disliked the first like many times I played it.
Yeah.
But I wanted to like it so badly because I just like the concept. I like the dice kind of character building you had. Chip theory games are like that for a lot of ways. Where I'm like, I want to like all these games, but I didn't like any chip theory game the first time I played them. Nowadays, I kind of like them straight out of the box.
Invest in
You have
those
to invest,
games.
yeah. And Too Many Bones is one of those ones where like you kind of just gotta. I'm generally, I think both of us are like pretty big advocates. Like if you do not like something, you do not need to try it again.
Yeah.
Like life is short. Do not waste time trying something you hate. But again, if there's something down deep where you're like, but I feel like I should like this, maybe then give it a second shot. And that was very much Too Many Bones for me.
Yep. I agree. I think the first time I played, I was really like drawn in by like the shiny.
Yeah.
Because you have like this character has all these different special dice, and what do they do? And I was like, I'm gonna get all those dice. And I didn't bother to like level up my stats at all. And this is a game where you have like your attack stat and your defense stat and stuff, which are your bread and butter.
Yeah.
Because these special dice are cool, but you use them once per encounter and it's gone. Whereas you can always attack, you can always defend. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. I just want to get these cool dice. And then I roll my like cool bomb die and blow it and miss and be like, cool. Oh, I have nothing else I can do. And I would just get walloped. And I'm like,
in past Mike's defense, it is that kind of thing where you're like, that's the sexy part.
Yes.
And you want to focus on the sexy
I still
part,
think
but there's
that's
like
true.
you do, and I do kind of wish it was a little more balanced towards that, as opposed to like, yeah, you need to up your dexterity, you know, and it's like.
But I think I found like the benefit. If I up my dexterity, what do I get to do? Roll more dice.
Yeah,
And that's what I want to be doing. So
Yeah.
I want to do that. I started to see the appeal of like why these things actually do get me to the sexy part, the part that's really fun.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of along the same lines of like Circadian's First Light, where it's like, I think I always thought Too Many Bones was like a different game than what it was. And it's like, it's about learning and messing around with your character. Like that's what it is, which is why it's such a lifestyle game, why most people play it solo, because you can just get in and be like, okay, but what if I get these? Because you're not going to get all your dice.
No.
So you're like, okay, what if I get this dice, and this die?
What does that create?
Yeah, and what does that create? And then this, because they're all so different, they're all so unique. And it's just, it took a while. I mean, up until somewhat recently, I think when we were prepping for our play of Too Many Bones Unbreakable,
Which you should watch.
which you should watch indeed, I even sent like a message to like Jeff and Jamie, because we were talking about Too Many Bones, and I was actively being like, this is why I don't like Too Many Bones, da 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 da. And then as we had to play more and more of Too Many Bones to prepare for that playthrough, I started to like it more and more and more. And then now it's like I sold it at home a lot, and I'm just like all in, but it took a while for me to like it, but now I freaking love it.
Yeah,
I want everything for it.
And that's kind of Chip Theory's model. Like they make these games that reward you for investing in them. They're kind of a lifestyle game. You really get into it. And I think we started to understand that like this is the types of games they want to make. And there's a lot that to gain from that. There's a lot of reward in that if you are willing to invest. If it's something that you find interesting.
Yeah.
And you've done a ton of that. I played a bunch and you played a ton more still, a lot more characters and stuff. So, it's one that we were wrong about. I'm like, you know what? The things that I critiqued and stuff before, I now understand better, you know?
I'm still not convinced this game isn't trash.
You gotta get convinced, man. You gotta get convinced. Number one is Brass Birmingham, baby. And Matthew Jude has left the chat, just like that. Brass Birmingham is a game that...
Objectively.
There's a series of Brass games, and Brass Birmingham is, I guess the consensus number one, since it's number one game, period.
Yeah.
This is a game where you are building out the Black Country during the Industrial Revolution. And you are kind of in the first half building out canals and stuff, connecting cities together, and then building out railways in the second half. And this is a game that is all about what I now understand to be positive player interaction. Because this is a game where you are building up industries in certain cities and things, and they're represented by tiles. And you're basically trying to get those tiles flipped over. And a lot of things, it might be like an ironworks, which provides iron to the area, which means other players can use that iron.
They sure can.
And if they use it and you deplete that tile of iron, you get to flip it over, which is, your kind of goal to become more valuable for you and stuff, and gaining income and on and on and on. But in the first game of this, again, it was probably early. It was probably a little over my head, a little heavier than I was ready for. And my main memory from that first game was I needed beer, which is a resource in the game. I needed beer to be able to move my trains around and do stuff. And I would spend all this time and energy trying to figure out, like, how do I get beer? And I would finally get my little brewery made. And then our buddy Steve would be like, cool, I'm going to use that beer and go do this. I'm like, I have no beer now. What do I do? Let me start over again. And I didn't see the fact that like that going away, sure, it maybe created a problem because I wanted to use that beer, but I also benefited from that. And the whole kind of mooching system in the game is one that when I came back around to it and understood that like, well, that is the goal, that I need to get these breweries and stuff flipped over.
Yeah, it comes down to that concept of like, you thought the game was something, and it turns out, no, that's not what you do in this game.
I just saw this. I saw it as a very take that game.
Yeah.
And like, sure, it can be that, but I was like, you just took my stuff. And I'm like, well,
but I also helped you. It's
and also it's like, you don't want your beer. It's like, we'll put it over here where it's not connected to the grid so that they can't take it. Like there are ways around this. And again, it's not very heavy. And now I see it as a very kind of straightforward game in terms of the mechanisms. You're playing cards and then taking an action with it, which is all kind of straightforward. Strategically, it's very, very heavy and stuff like that. And there's a lot to consider. But I now see like a city that's getting built up. It's like, cool, I'm going to build a railway into that city. And guess what? I'm getting points for all these industries you did because you got to ship them somewhere, right? Use my railway. And like, I see the benefit in how there's all these ways that you can kind of like mess with each other, but I'm giving you something and hoping that the thing I'm getting by using your coal or whatever, I'm hoping to get a net, a more positive net gain than what you're gaining.
Yeah.
But there's a huge consideration in that the fact that there's like the way you mess with each other is by helping them is kind of really interesting now. So that was like the biggest change from like absolutely hated it to absolutely love it. And you're somewhere on the journey.
I'm starting the journey.
Still
I
to
still
be
haven't played
told.
it again recently, but I know I'm going to like it a lot more.
Yeah. It's really cool. So that's our list. Those are 10 games that we feel like, you know what?
We were wrong about.
We're wrong about that.
We'll admit wrong. Down in the comments, admit where you were wrong. Let us know what game you were wrong about, either good or bad. And again, speaking of
it's
bad,
okay to be wrong about stuff and then learn and then,
yes, it is. God, please just admit when you're wrong. That would help the world if people would just admit they're wrong. It's not a big deal. And so over on our Patreon, again, we're going to have 5 more games that are kind of the opposite, where we liked them or maybe thought we liked them more than we did.
Maybe that first impression was.
And either cooled a lot or flat out disliked them now. Speaking of patrons, you've been seeing our patrons scroll by here. Thank you so much for being our patrons. We love you so much. Over there is a whole bunch of like first impressions. We do best of the
First
weeks.
impressions of Harvest and Pampero out right now. You can go check those out. Yeah, best of the week's kind of our favorite thing we've been playing. And supplemental list. So go check out that. Become a name on the list below.
Indeed. Thank you so much for being here, y'all. And we'll see you later.
Bye.